Okay, hi, Tom Cermak, EMTA. I'm an IICRC instructor and I teach the RRT class, Repair and Reinstallation. And today I just want to show a few things about doing seaming and doing repairs. And I think we're going to start with finding nap direction. You know, the biggest thing in every repair we do is we take a piece out and we switch the nap direction. It looks grossly different. So how we find nap direction is what we call the pen and paper test, or pencil and paper. And we roll the paper like this and it moves in the direction of the nap. So we see both of these are moving in the same direction. They're moving this way. So that's the nap direction. The nap direction goes from here to here. So when I'm doing my repairs, I want to do my repair in the same direction as the nap, following the same direction. Now I'm left-handed, so I do it from right to left. A right-handed person would do it from left to right. Doesn't matter as long as you're following in the nap direction. So here I've taken the liberty of already using seam sealer and sealing all the seams, and you can see they show up quite well under the UV light. So we've sealed all the seams on both sides. Now, you know, every repair, every seam we do, whether it's a bonded insert or repair, is about no gaps, traps, or overlaps. So what we're trying to do is make this bond together really well with no stuck-in fibers. You know, when we cut the fibers, we use a row finder like this as an example. We push it through the carpet and it separates the fibers like this. So we're not cutting the tips of the fibers, we're cutting through the backing down here. Now I've already done all this and seam sealed it just for this video, but I'm going to show you. Now in the first part I'm going to use the Kool Glide, which is a RF electromagnetics type seaming iron. It never gets hot. I can do a seam and stick it on my face, it will not hurt me. So what I want to do first though is we look about gaps, traps, and overlaps. So the first thing is, when I sealed this, I made sure all the fibers were pulled away from it so I wouldn't trap them. Then I'm going to do the same thing when I'm putting them back together. I'm going to make sure that the fibers meet correctly and there's nothing trapped. So I constantly am pulling them apart and trying to make sure that they match as well as possible. And if I see a trapped fiber, I'm going to pull it up so that it matches perfectly. Because believe it or not, one little teeny trap fiber can actually show. So let me check here. There we go. Oh, that's good. Okay, so how I would do this with the Kool Glide as an example, if I've already found nap direction, already sealed the edges and done everything else. Now, for a seam, I'm not going to use the transverse button we use for our bonded inserts. I'm just going to put it on low because it's a thin carpet. If it was a really thick carpet, I might use medium or high depending on how thick a carpet it is. So here's just a small example of a seam. So I'm going to put this here and I'm going to hit the button. Now in about 9 seconds it'll shoot off and tell me that particular thing is done when the power light comes off. This is where the arrows are on the back side to make sure I overlap my seaming. So I'm going to do this, I'm going to hit it again. While it's sitting there, I'm going to track it. Once it's tracked, I like to use the seamer down, the vacuum cooling tool. Put it on, move it down again, track, push the button for the next one. I think it's about done. I'll move it over again. Now the light's about ready to go off. When it goes off, I'll move it again like that. So I'll move it first, hit the button, then I'm going to track it. Then I'll move the seamer down the vacuum cooling tool like this, turn it on again. Light's almost off, we're done. Track it, make sure it moves in well. Move the cooler. Now the cooler just makes it so the glue dries much more rapidly, but it also, because it's a vacuum cooler, it actually is pulling the thermoplastic glue up into the backing, creating a better bond. So very quickly I was able to put a seam in, and if you look at the seam now from where you are, and we have multiple views of this, the seam came out perfectly. You can't even see it Now, no seam is invisible. It is a joining of two pieces. It's never perfect. But I like to use the same seaming iron, the same seaming tape, and the same sealers so they all melt at the same point, so they actually fuse the backing and then glue the backings together, so you get an amazing seam that doesn't have a lot of peaking, because we've actually used thermoplastic glues where I seam sealed it that melt at the same temperature as the tape. So now I have a glue that's fused the two backings together, and then a tape underneath that's glued the two pieces together. So that's about the best bond you could ever get. And you can't even see it. And I mean, I'm right on top of it, and the camera is right here. You cannot see where I put that seam in, and it took what? Under a minute. So, and I have a seaming board here, just to show you why. I have a seaming board here so that I could have a solid backing. In a residential thing where I have padding underneath, sometimes if you push too hard on an iron, especially with the hot melt irons, you could have a little difference and the backing might not be even. And again, that gaps between trapped fibers and overlaps, we don't want to have that. So seaming board just gives me a better smooth surface to get a better seam. Now I'm going to go on and show you how we do this with the hot melt iron. Give me just a second. Yeah. Well, I figured Mark just edited it out.